If you got here a little late and we haven't met yet, my name is Pastor Greg Hintz. I'm so excited to have you here. And you picked a great sermon series to come. In fact, this has been a sermon series where each and every single week, I'm being challenged in my life. Because what we're talking about is we're talking about things that keep us up at night. We've talked about stressors that we have. We talked about anxiety and how to work through that. Last week, we talked about a very important subject. Who remembers what we talked about last week? Regret. Good. We talked about regret and regrets that we have and how to move forward through that. Can someone tell me something they remember from last week's message on regret? It was deep. It sunk in, right? Learn from it? All right, good. Learn from it. Something else about regrets.
Something you've done, sometimes things you haven't done.
All right. It's not always something that we've done. Sometimes it's stuff that we haven't done. Right? Something that we haven't taken that step out yet. We wish we would have, but we look back with regrets towards that. Listen, if you weren't here last week, get on wickenburgchurch.com. Watch the video from last week's message because it really impacted a lot of lives. And listen, if you're in regret, you've been in regret, you understand regret, you need to hear what we talked about last week. But this week, we're going to talk about a brand new subject. We're going to be talking about the reality of death. Death. Someone at the first service, they saw my sheet for today and they're like, there's just this random word death on here, on this paper that I handed out. And I was like, no, that's what we're talking about today. And she was like, fun. I said that to someone coming in here. I'm like, man, we're going to have a great time today. I'm like, what are we talking about? I'm like, death. I'm like, great time. What are you talking about? Really, we're like that sometimes. Like we have this view of death. And what is this crossing over going to be like? And what is it going to look like? In fact, that's the question I want to open up with for all of us. And the question is simply this. What does death mean to you? And I'm going to let you answer. What does death mean to you? What do you think? Yes. Anxiety. You got to go back to the first week of this sermon series to learn a little bit about that. But death, anxiety. Good. What else?
Release.
Say it again.
Release.
Release. All right. So death, release. What else? Heaven. What was over here? Peace. Good. Heaven, peace, heavenly peace. Put you guys together. All right. Can I get one more? New paradise. Good. So this idea of paradise. All right, thanks. And a lot of times we have different views and different ideas. And I know some of what we heard actually sounded really good. But maybe for some of us that are here, we're kind of trying to figure that out. We don't have as much assurance of what that'll look like. In fact, for some, maybe we have this reality like, hey, I'm here now. I'm breathing life. I'm living it, right? I see light, but when death comes, well, that's when it's just going to go away. And darkness and ending and finality. And what does that look like, this next phase or maybe this lack thereof? Is this all that there is, these moments that I have on this place called earth? Is this going to be it? And there's a lot of folks that maybe that's where you're at today. I want to let you know that you're not alone. In fact, that's a question that this individual, who's this? Larry King. If you've never seen Larry King, this is Larry King. And he's wrestled with this, the thought of death. And he's been quite open about this wrestling that he's had within himself. In fact, he often talks about being frozen so that maybe one day they can unfreeze him and they find out whatever is wrong or how to heal that and that he could live longer. So he talks about this idea of being frozen. In fact, some of what he said this once. He said, I think death is the biggest fear that people have. They might say they don't, like I know I'm going somewhere. He says of those who believe in an afterlife. And then he says this, you don't. See, for him, there's not this assurance. He says, you don't know that. He also said this. He said, my biggest fear is death because I don't think I'm going anywhere. My biggest fear is death because I don't think I'm going anywhere. I just think this is it. This moment, this life is all that I have. He was having an interview once with Captain Kirk. Anyone know who that is? William Shatner, right? He's having this conversation with William Shatner, and out of nowhere, the conversation turns towards death. And you can see Larry King, he's kind of taken back, like, well, I didn't know we were going to talk about all this. But William Shatner just grabs a hold of it and just digs in. And in fact, I have that clip to show you today. It's about 2 minutes long. Check out this clip of Larry King with William Shatner.
How would you like to be remembered when they say the name 50 years from now? William Shatner.
We're not going to be remembered, Larry. Okay? It's gone. No. Dust on the...
Just gone.
What's gone?
That's the
within a
terrible
week,
thought to me.
a month.
To not exist.
That's right. And do you ponder that sometimes?
Yeah, ponder it sometimes. Yeah.
All the time.
All the
it's
time.
like with you. Death is coming. Death is coming your way, Larry.
What the hell?
It's not far away. So what are you going to do when that moment of consciousness and death, right there,
You die.
and you say, oh my God, I'm dying? Is that going to be the most fearful moment?
Sure.
The moment because you're thinking, yeah, I'm not going to die. I take a few more antibiotics, get the pump going a little faster, and I'll live. And all of a sudden you realize, my dog, my 15-year-old Dobie, died about 3 or 4 months ago. And I lay on the floor cupping his head, and I saw my dog die. I saw the film come over his eyes. And then I pet him. I'm crying. And I pet him. It's okay, Bucky. And then the film would peel back. And he'd look at me. And then it came back. And he was dying in front of me. And I've pondered the mystery of death for a long time. And I know it's right. Do you see anybody behind me, by the way? It's that kind of thing. We know it's coming at us. That young cameraman may die sooner, but we're going to die momentarily, and I find it fearful.
Could you imagine being that cameraman? You're like, bro, keep me out of this. What are you talking about? I'm not in this. But you heard William Shatner's words, and he says, we are going to die momentarily, and I find it fearful. I mean, this overwhelming understanding. I mean, even when I think about Scripture, I'm reminded of the book of James, chapter 4, verse 14, that says, how do you know what your life will be like tomorrow? Your life is like the morning fog. It's here a little while, and then it's gone. And I think every now and then we get an opportunity to experience that. Like something brings that back into perspective, because the reality is a lot of times we're just going through life, right? Things are going, and this is not a thought that we have on side of our mind. This is not something that we're thinking about, but every now and then something happens. And when that something happens, oftentimes it brings this subject of death right back to the forefront of our mind and our life, and we realize the shortness, and we realize the frailty of life. I mean, I've had moments like that, definitely in my life, when everything is going great and everything is going fine, and death is the furthest thing from your mind. I still remember a time in my life when I was married and had 2 kids, and we decided it was time to go on a family vacation. And we were going to leave the cloudy, depressing land of Cleveland, Ohio. And we were going to travel to the faraway sunny paradise of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. we were so excited, and it was going to be literally a family vacation. My mom and dad and my wife and I and our 2 kids, as we all loaded into a van that we had rented. And it was something that we were excited about. We were preparing for months, preparing what we were going to take, and my parents buying things where the kids can play in the ocean and make sand castles, and there was definitely preparation, an incredible amount of excitement. We were so excited, we just drove straight there, taking turns, driving all night long. And we finally get to Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, and it's evening time, and the sun is starting to set, and we unload as much as we can out of the van, but the only place that I want to be, the only thing I want to see is the ocean. I love the ocean, man. I just love the ocean so much, and I wanted my kids to see the ocean for the very first time. And so we decided we're all going to walk to where the ocean is. And if you've ever been to Cape Hatteras, there's a sand dune that you have to cross over. And I remember the sun had set, and we reach this sand dune, and we cross over the sand dune, and it's dark now. And it's so dark that you can't see the water, but you can taste it, and you can feel it in the air. I just take off running, kick off my shoes and just take off running. I got my kid in one arm. I'm dragging the other one through the sand. I'm like, man, we're going to see the ocean. And we do. We actually get to the ocean and dip our feet in the water. And it was just this incredible, incredible time. And then we're walking back. And we're walking back to the place, and it was my wife and I and our 2 kids. And then my parents, they were a little further back from me. Now, I thought, they were just having a parental moment. You know what I mean? Sand, wind, waves. And I didn't want to be anywhere near that, right? So we were walking as fast as we could back to the place. And then finally, they come back, and so we're all back at this rental house, and then we decide we're going to jump in the hot tub. There's a hot tub there, and so excited. So I run out, and I'm going through the van because we couldn't find the swim trunks or the towels or something. And I'm going through trying to find the stuff. And then all of a sudden, I hear my dad's voice. And my dad's like, Greg. And he's yelling my name in just this way. I knew something was wrong. And so I dropped everything that I had, and I went and I ran in as fast as I could. I remember throwing open the front door, walking through the front door, and I see my dad. And my dad's dragging my mom through the back door. And I'm like, what happened? He's like, I don't know. She just fell down, and I'm pulling her in. Now, something you got to know about me in this season of my life, I work in healthcare. That's my job. I drove an ambulance, and I worked in an emergency room. I was a nurse technician. I was used to seeing situations like this, but it's different when it's your mom. And I remember seeing my dad and seeing my mom and knowing that I have to do something. So I'm like, call 911, right? And I see my mom and I check and she's not breathing. And so I know now I got to do CPR, and I'm trying to figure out what it is, because when it's your mom, you're not really paying attention, right? And you're like, what is it? Is it 3 pumps, 10 breaths, 10 pumps, 3 breaths? I don't know. I'm just pumping and breathing and pumping and breathing. Finally, I see the lights in the window, and they're red and they're blue. And then I hear the sirens as they're coming, and the cops come in, and the paramedics come in, and everybody comes in, and they see my mom, and they rip her shirt off, and they put pads on her. Her body's jumping up as they're shocking her, trying to help her find life again. They put her on a gurney, and they put her in the back of an ambulance, and we start driving to the hospital. I'm driving behind this ambulance next to my dad. And my dad is weeping like a baby. You see, my dad loved my mom a lot. He started dating her when she was 15 years old. He was 18, 17, maybe 17, 18. He ended up going to Vietnam, right? He's in Vietnam. He gets leave. My mom runs away from home a little bit before her 18th birthday and hops in a plane and flies to Hawaii. My dad gets leave from Vietnam, flies to Hawaii. 3 days after her 18th birthday, they were married. Then he flew back to war in Vietnam, and she came back home. Her mom was not a big fan of my dad. All they knew was one another. He loved my mom with everything that he had, and now he's in the passenger seat crying, and I'm driving. going 100 miles per hour to the hospital. We pull in the hospital, and mind you, I worked in healthcare. I drove an ambulance, and I can tell by the way the paramedic gets out that it's not good for us. And so he takes my mom in the hospital, and then we go in, and we're sitting on this cold, dark, hard bench, waiting for a doctor to tell me news that I already knew. And the doctor comes in, and he looks at us and says, "I'm so sorry. Your mom, your wife, she didn't make it." We had to go back into that room where my mom was and say goodbye. Now that moment changed me. And I remember in that moment, I was angry. Like, I was angry at God. Like, come on, God, are you serious? Like, day 1 of vacation, you couldn't wait till day 7? Come on. We drove all this way, over 1,000 miles to get to this place, and you just take my mom like that? And I remember in a moment, and maybe you've had moments like that, the wall comes up. And oftentimes there's a lot of blame. And the beautiful thing about God, and listen, if you're in that place, if you've been in that place, let me tell you this, God is patient. He'll wait. He'll let you go through a process. He'll let you be angry. It's okay to be angry. Listen, if you've been angry, I want to let you know that's okay. I was there. But then a moment came, maybe a month, 2 months, 3 months. I don't remember the timeline. But I remember this moment when I was just talking to God and saying, "God, man, you changed my life. This changes everything." And he just whispered to me, he's like, "We all got a day." And I thought, man, isn't that true? Like, isn't that like the one common denominator for each and every single one of us here? Like, we all got a day. We all got an expiration date. And in 100 years, looking around at this church, we're all gonna be gone. Well, maybe for some of you vegans out there, I'll give you 110. All right, so you get a little longer. We're all gonna be gone. And then the Lord began to minister to me about the reality of my mom. And you see, like, my mom had one place that she loved more than any other place, and it was Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. She had people that she loved more than anyone else, and that was her family. And the Lord, in his divine knowledge, arranged for my mom to be in the place that she loved more than anything. With the last activity that she did was walk to the beach and see the ocean that she loved so much, surrounded by her family that cared so much, that was her last moment on earth. And I realized that it wasn't about me, it was about her. And it's about all of us, the reality that we have just this one life to live. And the one thing that I can take from my mom, in fact, it became the one sentence that led her life and is the one thing that I took from her. In fact, I believe that it's the word that you would see on her gravestone today. Live life to the fullest. See, that was her message. Her message was not a message about death, but her message truly was a message about life. And as I began to reflect on her and what she had left inside of me, I realized that the death really doesn't need a headstone. Death doesn't need a gravesite. That many of us, even with breath in our lungs, are living a life of death today. Are we living life to the fullest? Are we truly engaged in embracing the gift of life that we have today? See, I can honestly tell you, my mom did that. She died in her early 50s, but each and every single day of her life, she lived those days to the fullest. See, when I look at my life today, I gotta realize that I don't wanna ever be afraid of death, but I do wanna be afraid of an unlived life. I want to be afraid of not embracing the fullness of what God has for me today, of not being all in with the days that I have, not giving all that I am to this moment right now. See, that's why you're here. You're here on this earth to embrace this moment, to live your life, to take all that God has given you. And sometimes even the bad stuff, the horrible things that you've had to endure in life, and say, you know what, all of that makes part of me. And I'm going to pour this part of me out to this earth and this world, and I'm going to live my days to the fullest. See, for you, I'm not worried about your last day on earth. I'm not worried about the last moment that you breathe, but I am worried about the breath that you have in your lungs today. And the question is, are you really living life to the fullest? Have you come to the place where your life is making a difference, where you're living for God's glory today and every day? See, we don't have to worry about it. Listen, if you're a follower of Jesus, the Bible is clear. The most famous verse of the Bible, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, so that whosoever believes in him shall have life, and life everlasting, shall not perish, but live forever. We hold on to that truth and that reality for us. We don't need to worry about eternity future. All we have is this moment today. And what are we gonna do with the breath that we have inside of our lungs right now? You know, we've talked about a verse in the last sermon series and in this one from the book of John, chapter 10, verse 10. And it was Jesus speaking, and he's speaking about a thief. And he says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? But Jesus said, but I have come that they may have life, and have life in abundance. To have an abundant life. Listen, that life is not future, not heavenly, even though that will be abundant, but he's talking about an abundant life right now. With the days that you have, that as you follow God and you follow Jesus, our days are called to be abundant days. Our life is called to be an abundant life. And so my question for you today, are you living the abundant life? Are you living in the fullness of all that God has for you today? Because he has a lot for you. Like, let's look at Jesus. In your opinion, as you know the life of Jesus, did Jesus have an abundant life? We would say yes. I don't know about you, but when I read about Jesus, I read about Jesus living life and impacting people and touching people in great ways, lives being changed because of his existence, changing the entire trajectory of the world by his teaching, his life, his love, and his sacrifice of himself. Did he live an abundant life? Absolutely. But did you know he only had 33 years to live it in? So don't tell me you're too young, and don't tell me you're too old. Because if you haven't had it by now, today is the day when you can start living it. I was just talking to someone just the other day. Actually, it was Dr. Roy. And he was talking about, he went back, and I don't have all the details correct, Dr. Roy, so please forgive me, but I got the gist of your story. He went back to his high school reunion. And he went back to a reunion, and he saw some classmates, some students. He said one of the students had done great things in their life, talking about doing things with NASA and like world-changing stuff. But he looked back at that season of his life and he said, you know, throughout all those years when I was doing all those things, I was gaining all those awards, winning all those trophies, invited all over to do all these things. He said, I never told one person about Jesus. He said, I never shared my faith with one person for 35 years. And he's now in his 80s. He says, I look back at that season, all the accolades, all of the awards, all of the things, and he says, I look at it 35 years wasted because I wasn't living for the glory of God. That's a lesson from somebody. Let me ask you, in your life, are you living for God's glory? Are you living in such a way where you're saying, God, this life is all I have. I want to live for you today. I love what Mark Twain said. Mark Twain said this. He said, the fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time. Man, they're ready, right? You ever met someone like they're ready? Like whenever it's going to be, I'm all right with that. I remember I met a man, his name was Howard. He was 100 years old. He passed away this year, 3 months away from being 101 years old. I sat down and talked with Howard when he was 98. And he was like, well, Pastor Greg, I want to be ready for that day. I said, what day? My death day. I was like, well, okay, what do you got to do? And he began to pour out his heart and talk about his life. Like, he was talking about things that were minuscule in the whole scheme of things, but to him, they were important. And he would talk to me and he would say, I want to confess this thing, and I just want to share this thing, and I just want to let go of this thing. He's like, I just want to be with God. 98 years old. I prayed with him with tears running down his eyes. He said these words. He said, I'm ready. He still lived for almost 3 more years after that. And every single day, he shined so bright and was so filled with love, grace, and compassion that he touched every life that he saw. He was living life fully at 98, 99, and 100 years old. What's your excuse? Right? I mean, if he could do it at 100, let me tell you, you can do it today. So how do we do that? I just want to drop 3 little tools, 3 little keys inside of your mind on how you can do that. The first one's simple. We talked about it last week. Follow Jesus closely. Remember, I was talking about being in the supermarket with my little one. Remember being in shopping in the shopping cart, and I look at my little girl and I say, come on, honey, it's time to go. She looks at me all sassafras like, I ain't going with you, Daddy. I'm like, come on, honey, it's time to go. I ain't going with you, Daddy. So what do? I go around the corner and I hide behind the Cheetos, right? And I'm just staring at her the whole time until that moment she realizes she's all alone. She drops the goldfish. She starts looking around. And then I just pop out from behind the Cheetos. And it said, I told you to come. And she sees me, man. She takes off running, jumps in my arms, and I think God's like that sometimes, isn't he? We're like, where are you, God? Where are you, God? He's just hiding behind the Cheetos, and he comes out and like, I told you to come. But in our lives, I want to follow Jesus closely. I love his words when he says, I am the light of the world. That's what Jesus said. And he said, whoever follows me does not walk in darkness. But he says, but will have the light of life. I want you to think about this in your life. As you're following after Jesus, I just want you to be so close that you can't help reflect him to the people around you. When Moses climbed the mountain, the glory of God was so much upon him that when he came down, everybody saw the glory of God that shone from him. What about you in your life? Are you so close to Jesus that you're being changed? When you go to work, they're like, man, what happened to you? Who are you? Like where you're just transforming and being changed by his glory. Have you reached that place in your life? I want you to live like that. I tell people that followers of Jesus, don't go around telling people that you're a Christian. Just live your life like Christ would have you live, and you won't have to say a word because they're going to see it shining so brightly from you. I want people to be coming up to you saying, what's different about you? There's something different about you. I see something inside. I want people to begin to do that just as you're exuding the love and the grace and the goodness of God to all that you come in contact with. Follow Jesus closely. And if you want to live an abundant life and you want to live the life and live life fully, you also got to guard your tongue. You got to watch that's coming out of your mouth. When you look at how you're speaking, are you speaking life or are you speaking death? The book of Proverbs, chapter 18, verse 21 says this, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Tell me one way that we speak death. How do we speak death? Over ourselves. Say it again. We can talk negative about ourselves, all right? When we look in the mirror, we begin to talk negative or just how we live and the things that we say in our mind. How else can we speak death? Criticism, good, having a critical heart. What else? Gossip, good. Gossip is a great way to speak death. What else? Can you guys think of anything else?
Sometimes I literally say, just kill me now, like.
All right, good. Self-loathing, self-hatred, or just saying those things. Yeah, just kill me now, right? Well, can I get one more? Judgmental things that are coming out of our mouth, just really judgmental towards others. Yeah, okay. You know, the interesting thing is we were really quick to come with ways that we speak death. Now I'm going to ask you this. How do we speak life? Encouragement, great. What else? Affirmation, praise, love, by speaking love, good. What else?
Being joyous.
Being joyous, good. Can I get one more?
Passionate.
Being passionate. And I would even add, how about forgiving? Ooh, yeah, that's a good way. That's a good, everyone's like, ooh. I was like, yeah, that's a good one, Greg, yeah. Yeah, you know, we have that power to speak love and speak life inside of us. But I would ask you, like, are you doing that? Is this how you're living? Is this something that you're doing? Is this part of what you are? Because really quick, we can find ourselves speaking death. Maybe even to those under our roof. Start there. Start with the people that are there. Are you speaking life to those under your roof? Are you speaking death? Are you building up or are you tearing down? Our tongues has an incredible power to build up or to tear down. Then take it a little bit further. What about at your job? What about with your coworkers? What about with the people that are inside your circle of friends? Are you building up or are you tearing down? See, because the interesting thing too, another biblical principle is we reap what we sow. When we become the people that are tearing down and bringing death, oftentimes that which we give out comes back to us. And so now this begins a cycle that continues on. We give it out, it comes back. We give it out, and now we find ourselves just surrounded by this negativity. Scratch that record and begin to speak life and love and truth and forgiveness and grace. And when you begin to sow that out there, you're going to begin to reap that back. It actually changes you from the inside out. Is that a good challenge this week? Speak life? All right, we got one more, and this is it. If we want to truly live an abundant life, we got to learn the power of surrender. We have to learn how to live this thing, how to live this place of surrender. I say a lot of us in our lives, we're living our lives like this. I'm going to control everything and make everything and do everything. But we got to come to the place where we begin to open up our lives and say, God, I surrender to you. My life, it's not about me. It's all about you. See, God has a plan for you. And I know for some of us out there, that may be hard to really grab a hold of. Maybe we look back at some of the decisions that we've made, some of the mistakes that we made, some of the things that we've done, and we say, God, there's no way. There's no way that you can ever bring this thing back to life. It's too far gone. It's just way out there. There's no way that this thing could ever be. I want to let you know that God's not done. God does some of his best work in these moments. When you go from here to here and you just begin to surrender and say, God, I'll follow you wherever you lead me, wherever you want me to go, I'm going to go there. He's going to do it. Read your Bible. I mean, how was Moses in his 80s? God gets a hold of him. Look, some of you aren't even halfway there yet. God can get a hold of you right now, right where you are. Look at Timothy. He was young. People would look down on him. How could God use someone that's so young? God did. God got a hold of him, and God used him even at a young age. Listen, you're not too young and you're not too old for God to get a hold of you, but sometimes we can be too prideful and too full of ourselves, and that doesn't matter how old you are. I want to challenge you today. Will you come to the place where you say, God, it's not about me, it's all about you? Will you open your heart? Will you open your tomorrows? Will you open your future and say, God, my life is yours. I surrender to you. Let me pray for you. Bow your heads, please. God, I want to thank you so much for your word. I want to thank you so much for the encouragement of people, Lord, even as we look at this journey of life and what we go through and sometimes the struggles that we have, and also looking back some of the moments that we missed. I think about that. That was what we talked about last week, those moments that we missed. And maybe for some that are even here right now, when you think of the moments you missed and you think of death, those two things kind of collide. regret and death often will collide, and we look back and we say, man, I wish I would have done this different, or I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have been this person or been at that place, and we weren't. And here's what we have to realize. We can't turn back the hands of time. We can't go backwards, but we can start today. And we can look at the relationships that we have, and we can look at the people that are around us, and we say, I'm not going to miss this opportunity. I'm not going to miss this opportunity to be kind. I'm not going to miss this opportunity to show love. I'm not going to miss this opportunity to forgive. I'm not going to miss this opportunity to let this person know how much they mean to me. I'm not going to carry this stuff with me anymore, but today is a day that change can happen. And listen, I don't want you to ever be in regret. I don't want you to live in that place. I don't want you to live in yesterday. But I do want you to live in the overwhelming reality that your future is going to be dictated by the choices you make today. And today you have the power of change. You have the power to change the entire trajectory of your life by the decisions that you make. And I want to encourage you, I want to challenge you. If you're not satisfied, if you're not happy with the place where you are, this is your day of change. This is your day where only you, I can't do it for you, only you do it for you. And you say, I refuse to continue going down this road anymore. Maybe for some you hear these words, and the surrender for you is a surrender to Jesus and his plans for your life. You've been so busy doing this thing on your own. This is the moment to say, God, it's not about me, but it's all about you, and I surrender my life to you. I'm going to ask for forgiveness, grace, love, and life, and I'm going to follow you the rest of my life. And if you're here and that's your prayer from your heart, I want to pray with you. And what I'm going to ask you to do in just a second, I'm going to have you lift up your hand and we're going to say a prayer together. Don't worry, I'm not going to call you to the front. Just right where you are. This is between you and God. So if you say, this is my moment of surrender, this is my moment to commit all the days from this day forward to Jesus, where I'm going to be forgiven and I'm going to walk with him. And I may not get it perfect, but I know that he's going to be with me and he's going to be there for me. I want to say a prayer with you. So on the count of 3, I want you to lift your hand up high if that's you. You ready to say, I surrender all to Jesus. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Lift it up high so I can see you. I see you. I see you. I see you. I see you. Hands all over this place. I see you. I see you. I see you. Saying yes to Jesus. I see you. We're going to say a prayer with all those that lifted their hands up. And if you're here and you're already a follower of Jesus, I want you to pray this prayer with those that are praying it for the very first time. Say these words loud enough so that you can hear them. Say, Jesus, I surrender to you. I'm sorry for my past, for my mistakes, for my sin. But I believe that you love me and that you died for me to give me hope and a future. Today, I turn to you and I run to you. And I thank you for your forgiveness, your grace, and your love. Help me live every day for you.